this is how I got into creative finance. So I go to the title company, I open escrow on all of these transactions, and there's a lady named Eileen Brown that I end up meeting. Eileen Brown has been in the industry for 48 years. Like the OG, knows everything about everything. And she's like, where did you come from? Like, you opened 4 contracts. I've never seen you before. Did you used to open your title stuff over at a different company? I was like, nope, these are my first 4 contracts. Like, she's like, in 30 days? Like, who are you? And I told her about the bunny story. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like, where are your leads coming from? And I tell her, and she goes, so you have more leads? I go, yeah, but I can't help them. She goes, what do you mean? What's going on with the leads? And I go, well, the other leads I have, I got 50 leads that month. I got 4 contracts. And I said, well, the other 44 people that I have that are leads don't have any equity. And some of them want too much money, right? As an agent, I'm sure you listed houses for people that are just like, I want to sell my house for 300 grand over what retail is. And you're like, dude, what are you talking about? Right. And like, we just closed a $20 million apartment complex in Springfield, Illinois a couple of weeks ago. I paid $1 million over retail, but I did no money down, seller finance on 265 units. This stuff, like Eileen Brown goes, go back to those people that want too much money or the people that don't have equity and bring those to me and I'll show you how to do subject to and seller finance. And I'm like, subject what? And what's seller finance? So she whiteboards all these things out for me, shows me that I could go back to those leads that essentially were dead for me. And I got an extra 4 contracts that month just from creative finance. And I walked through with her and I found that the amount of bunnies I could find, essentially, like all these people had a different version of bunnies that were keeping them from selling. Eileen taught me how to go find all the bunnies. Help the people that don't have equity that are going to foreclosure. Like Maricopa County, if you guys look up, I don't know how Vegas is, but Maricopa County where I'm at, 3 people get foreclosed on every day. And I look at those people like, you're getting foreclosed on? Your credit's going to be destroyed? Let me come in and fix your credit. Let me take over the existing debt. I'll turn it into a cash flowing property and I'll rebuild your credit. I didn't know that that existed at that moment until Eileen told me. I had to lay down on the ground. I was so blown away. I was like, how is this possible? She was like, well, I've been doing it for 48 years. I'm like, this is happening? She's like, yeah, I do 2 or 3 of them every single week. I was like, no way. So I did that for 4 or 5 months. And then I got my first due on sale clause called on me. I called an attorney. The attorney's like, oh yeah, this is easy. I've ran into these. This is what we do. Boom, boom, boom. I'm like, okay. So what's the worst thing that could happen in these due on sale clause? That's it. Boom. And I lit the world on fire. Bought 300 single family homes and 1,500 multifamily doors, all creative finance.
So what's your pitch when you walk in to the homeowner?
The pitch is pretty easy.
Are they all behind on their payments?
No.
Is that
No, like one of the best seller finance stories I could tell you is I got so good at finding the bunnies for the wholesalers and agents that agents would call me and go, hey, my client wants too much money. They don't need the money. They just want a really high purchase price. Again, seller finance is typically gain related and subject to is pain related, right? They have a painful situation. Seller finance is like, they're greedy. And justifiably, it's their house, right? So I would get wholesalers that would call me, and I got a wholesaler called me like 4 years in, and this is just a good story that tells you how this is all structured and exactly how the flow is. Wholesaler's name is Tom. Tom calls me up. He goes, hey, I've got a property on 1906 South 78th Place. Seller looked at Zillow, and the Zillow price is 100 grand. She wants 110 grand for the property. This happens all the time. So as a wholesaler, what do you have to pay? What do you have to buy that for?
80, 75?
No, I'm way lower than that because the house isn't worth 100 grand. It could be worth 100 grand if it was renovated, right? Sure. So as a wholesaler, you would have to pay probably 40, 45. So Tom is like bewildered. He's like, how the freak am I going to pay your house for 100 grand? He meets me at a RIA, like a little real estate investor meetup. And he says, you're the creative finance guy, right? So if I ever have a weird lead, I can call you. Go, yep. And that became my business. I just went on other people's appointments that had impossible leads. So Tom calls me up and he goes, hey, you want to come meet with Susan is her name. So I go to the appointment. I meet with Dale and Susan. We meet in their little house. They have tenants in the house, but they told the tenants to leave for a little bit so I could come in and tour the property. Standing in the kitchen. And I said, same thing I said to Janie Munson 4 years prior. I said, what's kept you from selling the house? She says, everybody keeps lowballing me. And I want to retire. We're sick of dealing with the tenants. What do we call those people? We call them tired landlords. They're done. Like they're not great operators. They're sick of switching out toilets and light fixtures and stuff. So she goes, I can just keep getting lowballed. I go, let me guess. And this is my pitch. This is how I convert from a cash conversation to a creative conversation. I go, well, let me guess. You're probably getting offers around 40, maybe $50,000. And she's like, yeah, how did you know? I go, because if I was going to buy the house for cash, I would probably offer that same amount as well. And you see what I did there. I'm like, if I was going to offer that much, if I was going to offer cash, I'd offer that much too. And she's like, what do you mean? You're not going to offer me cash? I go, no. If you were going to sell the house for 40, 50 grand, you would have sold it to somebody before I got here. You want more money. So I typically will match somebody's price as long as they give me terms. And she's like, what's terms? She has no idea what terms are. And so I told her a story about my first transaction I ever did. Was an F-150. As a contractor, I had an F-150 that had like 320,000 miles on it. So I went to Kelley Blue Book and I go, what's this truck worth? She says, or Kelley Blue Book says $5,000. So I go put it on Kelley Blue Book. What offers am I getting at $5,000?
What price, Jack? 3?
Yeah.
Getting 25.
25.
Two and a half.
Offer $1,000.
Because you're smart. But my highest offer was $3,100.
Sure.
But that truck was being used for my construction company, so it made me more money being used. I was willing to deal with the headaches it was giving me versus letting somebody buy it for $3,100. So I tell Susan, just like I tell every seller the same story when I was going on appointments. Now I got a team that does that. But I tell Susan, I go on Kelley Blue Book. I get people calling me, lowballing me, just like you're getting lowballed right now. And I decide to go get belligerent, just like you, Susan. Like I go belligerent. I go, all right, I'm going to change my listing from $5,000 to $10,000 because then in that situation, if I do get lowballed, I'll get lowballed at $5,000. But what happened is nobody even saw my post. Nobody looked at it. People laughed at it. Probably didn't even message me. And a couple months later, didn't sell. My wife comes in and she goes, hey, sweetheart, like, is there any way you can get this truck out of the driveway? I got to like kind of move around it to get into the garage every time. I'm like, what do you want me to do? And she's like, why don't you take payments for the truck? I was like, oh my gosh, that's so freaking genius. So I literally put my truck back on Craigslist. I change one thing. I say F-150 will take payments. So I say, Susan, do you think I sold my truck for $10,000? She goes, probably. I go, I sold it for $12,500 with $1,000 down. And I go, that's what terms is. And she's like, I'll do that all day long. And she goes, okay, so you'll give me 110. I go, I will come up to 110 as long as you give me terms that make sense for me. And so that was a deal. I got $0 down, 0% interest. You can pull up the deed of trust that we created. Most of my seller finance deals are 0% seller finance because I'm matching their number. And a lot of them are no down payments. Obviously that requires some credibility, right? They got to see my track history. They got to see who I am. But the average deal, I probably put 5% down. No credit check. I've never had my credit checked on a single deal. Nobody's ever asked for my job history. Nobody's ever asked for my tax returns. Not a single time out of the last 700 transactions I've done creative finance. Not one time. Everyone goes through title. We get title insurance on every single one. Depending on the state, like Atlanta, I buy a lot of deals in Atlanta, always goes through a closing attorney in Atlanta because they're an attorney state, not a title state. And that's what I've just focused on. I focused on if I don't have money, how do I buy a piece of real estate? And I thought like the radio stuff, like no money down and all that kind of stupid crap. I was like, dude, just freaking scam artists out here. As a blue collar contractor, I just was like, I heard it on the radio as I'm cruising around and I'm like, all of that is fake. But I can tell you can look up any address. You can look at this address. By the time you guys list this, I'll be the owner of this property. Or by the time you guys put this podcast up, this house on 8110 Cerro Medina, San Antonio, Texas, it gets brought to me today. I will be the owner tomorrow in one day. That's how fast creative finance is. I don't have to go through credit checks. I don't have to go through appraisals. I don't have to go through inspections. I will become the owner of this property today.